Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second day of the Airthings Masters. It's the first tournament in the 2022 Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. And if you're wondering where the dog is actually currently taking a walk with Lucy. We are trying to outdoor train him, and he's gotten pretty good at one half of the things that are supposed to happen outdoors for dogs. You didn't ask, but you got that information. Let's jump into all the games. I have nothing else to say in this introduction, I don't think. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday, or if you're watching this on Monday, or if it's almost Tuesday, I don't know. We're going to have 2 Magnus games. We're going to have 6 games total. We're going to have a great time. We're going to kick things off with Magnus trying to have a better day 2 than he had at day 1. He ended day 1 with 2 losses. This is one of his games from the middle of day 2. When he's playing against Hans Niemann from the United States. Now, Magnus plays a symmetrical English, which he wasn't doing that here, but now c4, c5. And Hans advances into the middle with the E and D pawns. Now, we get CD, ED. And by the way, you might have noticed I have a lot more energy today. We fell asleep at like 9:45 p.m. yesterday because of the dog. Yeah, I think I slept maybe 8-9 hours after sleeping about 5 for 3 straight days. But don't worry, the humor will be just as fire today, not anything else. D5. So the point of Hans's move is so that Black can't play D5 or E6. Can't play D5 himself. E6 he absolutely can play and will play. In fact, he will play it right now. Now, the interesting thing about this position, Hans Niemann plays the move D5, which is the highest scoring move in the position. Stockfish also likes the move D5 very much. It thinks it's the only move for an advantage. So he plays it. Now, the funny thing is that Magnus Carlsen himself has played this position and this move with white against the Nijgiri. The, Harry Potter Half-Blood Prince situation. You dare use my spells against me, Potter. In fact, this entire position occurred, except I don't think H3 happened. I think Magnus castled against Anish, and that game went knight d7, bishop f4, knight c5. It was a very complicated game. The reason why white is slightly better is because white has a little more space, and this is a bit of a target, but it's probably objectively just balanced. Now, in this game, we have h3, rook e8, and just very standard development here. White fully develops everything. There is no knight g4 covered by this pawn. Okay, so where are we going from here, right? Well, Magnus Carlsen sacrifices a rook for a bishop. Now, as I like to say, to the untrained eye, that looks like absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. But this kind of sacrifice, rook for bishop on e3, dark squared bishop, particularly in kingside fianchetto positions of the King's Indian defense, this oftentimes will arise in like various Grunfelds as well. This is actually very potent for black. And the reason is that the queen comes to the e-file, and despite white having a rook for a bishop, white is not able to really get much. Black just plays a bunch of normal moves. Where is white's advantage? The power of rooks is to team up on an open file against the target, but black has very potent piece play himself. He's going to put something on e4 in a moment, and he's going to put his bishop on h6. Now, Hans could at some point consider e4, and that probably is a very good way to go as well, because it prevents that entirely. He chooses it this way, and he chooses to kick the knight out like this. Magnus transfers the knight to e4. We have a trade, and we have a trade further once again, and the bishop goes to b5. So just a very dynamic and interesting position. Now, if you let Stockfish think about it, it says that white is better, because the more pieces come off the board, the more powerful the rooks will be. Does that make sense? So when there's a lot of pieces on the board, the rooks are not so strong. But the less pieces on the board, the rook's power is going to be felt. Magnus plays h5, then he plays bishop back to d7, and Hans is just expanding. Magnus goes to the c-file to try to get some damage there. And here, I believe Hans could have done a bit better by not allowing the rook to come in with tempo. He must have thought that when this happens, this rook is just going to be nice for him. So he will put some pressure on that rook. But Magnus here can play the move g5, which is just an unbelievable move. He can, g5, g4, and then he's coming in like this. But he goes rook c4, and the game continues. Now here, if Hans had just stayed patient for a little bit longer and played the move b5 and just kind of kept it together and then chilled out a little bit, he would have actually been in very good shape. Instead, he plays e5, he sacks a pawn, and he goes d6. Take some serious, you-know-what to play like this. Willpower, all right? Not, relax. Rook goes back to c6 to try to get this pawn, and Magnus scoops up. Hans scoops up, and we have the following position. But Hans here makes a slight mistake. He goes knight g5. And the reason why knight g5 in and of itself is not that bad of a move, but what ends up happening is that these pawns become liabilities for white. And so we have a very complex fight that turns into an endgame where Magnus is just going to pray to God, whatever Norwegians believe in. I don't know if that's like a fancy-looking snowman or something, but yeah, he's praying to God that those pawns are going to make it through. And all of a sudden, I mean, all Magnus needs is just a little bit of torque, and he saves his king from getting mated. He proceeds to march the pawns down, and he has 4 extra pawns in an endgame, and he ends up going on to win. Very complex game to kick us off here on this recap. Very tense, and Magnus had a very strong winning streak going in day number 2. He was actually on pace to win all 4 of his games. Next game I would like to show you is the game between Vincent Keimer and Anish Giri. This game actually inspired the thumbnail and the name of the video because, well, you're going to see. d4, knight f6, and we have a Rogozin with bishop to b4, queen's gambit declined. Keimer plays queen a4 check, forcing the knight in front of the c-pawn, brings the queen back and plays like this. And in general, the game plans here for black are to take, to play e5, or to bring the bishop back to f8, so to play knight b4, and at some point to liberate the situation in the center. A6 is just a waiting move. The bishop goes back. Bishop d7. The other game plan for black is to chill and do nothing. But at some point, black will play e5. Now, this position actually followed the game between Wesley So and Vidit Gujrathi. So they were following that game from 2019 Khanty-Mansiysk World Cup. And there Wesley played knight e5, which is the top stockfish suggestion, and he went on to win the game, just not allowing black to get any activity. In this game, Keimer plays bishop e2. So either Keimer knows this position and thinks that he's smarter than Wesley So and whatever Wesley So uses to analyze the position, or Keimer just played bishop e2. E5, so this is why you want to play knight e5, because you don't allow your opponent to do that. Queen c8 and bishop to f5, forcing the queen out toward b3. Anish closes the center, moves his bishop out of the way, and here Vincent's like, all right, I gotta play f3 so I can crack open the center and activate my rook. Anish is like, go ahead and crack open the center, you bozo. This doesn't scare me at all. In fact, this just plays into my hands because my bishop is so powerful. Well, bishop c4. Now, oops, sorry, no. Bishop c4, the intention is obviously take, and actually just really very annoying pressure on this pawn that black can only meet by damaging his structure like this. But actually, the best move for white isn't even that. It's just to go d5 and continue to mow down the middle of the board. So, Anish plays c6. Anish's idea is that white has nothing. So again, if white takes, it's a queen trade, you solidify. And if white just, does something like this, you block the middle. And so he plays c6. And here Vincent Keimer goes, I really don't like Anish Giri. And he plays rook takes f7, which is just absolutely savage. The point of this move is that if you take like this, I take the bishop, then I take the rook, I'm completely winning. I might not even take the rook. I might play rook f1, and I might just chill here and crush you in the long run. You could take with the king, which is what happens in the game. Actually, the computer thinks that you should go here and just act like this never happened. The house is burning down, there's a dog meme. This is fine. Rook f7, this is fine. This is fine. And then the best move for white is actually just go back. But Anish is like, this kid doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Maybe Anish thought bishop e6 and then rook f1. I don't know. Maybe he thought something like this. But Keimer gives a check. Knight f5, rook f5, and just plays knight g6. Again, just acting like, no, he's in no rush. Now he's threatening rook f8, deflecting and checking. After take, nobody can block because f8 will be hanging. And queen f7. And despite just slow playing, look at his pieces. The white pieces have come to collect the debt from Anish Giri who borrowed the money. All right, this is not good right now. You know what I love in all this? This bishop hasn't moved. The bishop is chilling on c1 like, just like, I'm good. I'm not in any rush whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, that's actually exactly how this game went. I mean, Keimer played b4. And he just maybe has a long-term idea to do something like this. But queen d8 came, and Keimer was like, all right, it's time to just win this game. Yeah, knight f7, I dance out, my knight comes in. Knight takes h6 as a check, and knight back, rook h5, rook h8. And Vincent Keimer won this game without even using a bishop. I mean, like, my man went full Khabib mode. Smash. I just want smash everybody. I just want smash. Rook takes f7, brother. No, brother. This is #1 bullshit, brother. Knight takes f7. I mean, rook takes f7 and just, I mean, beautiful. I mean, violent stuff here. Credit to Keimer, who just wins an amazing game. Third game I would like to show you is the game between Artemiev and Ding Liren. Obviously, Ding Liren, we got to look at some of his games. They are always interesting, always fascinating. This one was in English, where he plays a3. Now, what's interesting is this is a reverse Sicilian defense. So e3, a3 for white is basically this. All right, this is going to be a little bit confusing. Bear with me. You see? Similar, right? Like this. And then knight c3, knight c6. So if we just look at the position, I mean, this, yeah, right? It's kind of the same. But white is playing white. And this is a Sicilian. White is playing white. These are the top quality insights that you get here on the channel. The point is that the structure is just very different, very unique. Now, the most important moment in this game happens right here. When Ding Liren says, I'm actually not interested in having a long battle. I just want to play f5. I want to smash you real quick. Bishop d3, and he shuts the door. So f4, I think you know what's coming. g5, g4, takes, promote a second queen, take the king, GG. So that's what he wants. What does Artemiev want? He wants to battle on the queen side. a5, though, Ding Liren will see him right there. What are you going to do with that pawn? Bishop b2, king h8. Look, the king's a bit of a beta male. It happens. You know, hopefully he can bounce back, but you got to escort the king before you do some battle, because if he gets caught in the crossfire, he slows everything down, you know. He lives in the queen's boyfriend's basement, basically. Let's just not worry about the king. So the king gets out of there. Rook goes to d1, queen e7, bishop e2, bishop e6. Now, Ding Liren just wants one thing in life. He's a menace. He's an absolute menace. He just wants violence. He is a universal player and easily the top 3 player in the world right now. It's a travesty what's happening to him in the last 3 years. I mean, it's just, go watch the video, The Saddest Story in Chess. It's by one of my favorite YouTubers named Levi Rosman. So castles, rook f6, and g5. And I've been telling you, I mean, yes, you can take this pawn. In fact, you probably have to take this pawn, because if you play the move b5, I'm just going to go g4, you take, I take. It's not going to end well for one of us, and that one of us is named Vladislav. So knight takes g5. Bishop just slides right back to d7. Just right back to d7. You took my pawn, but it's a poisoned apple, right? So here we go. Rook g8, knight goes back to d8. Here it was more accurate to play this move according to Stockfish. And I normally point out Stockfish moves for other Grandmaster games. In this case, and in the case of like Magnus games, no, Stockfish, shut up. You know nothing. Ding Liren would clap you 9 times out of 10. The 10th time he felt bad, so he gave you the win. Knight back to d8. Not the best move, because you allow king h1, and now there's no bishop h3 with the idea with the pin and on the king. Doesn't matter, because his name is Ding Liren. He'll figure it out anyway. Now, at this point, he's just threatening one thing. In fact, it's so bad, he's not just threatening that one thing. For example, let's say white goes here. No checkmate, right? Queen sack, shut up, you get mated anyway. So he's threatening something very nasty. Queen h4. So what does Artemiev do? Artemiev has to play g3, preventing queen h4. But the attack is not done. Now I'm threatening rook takes h2, king h2, queen h4. It's a mate in 2. So you play queen c2. Knight e6. Here comes my knight. c5. He's trying to deflect him to go that way. He's actually giving him 2 pawns. He's doing that to soften up the queen side. It's actually a very nice counterattack here. Rook f2. And despite the fact that Ding Liren is 2 pawns up, it's not that clean of a position. It's really not. If you trade some pieces, this bishop still has various tactics, and it's rapid, all right? These things happen. Takes, and he's giving up some more material because rook d6. And even though I gave you some pawns, those pawns are not very mobile in the endgame. So Artemiev begins fighting back, and we're in an endgame now. In fact, we're in an opposite-colored bishop endgame. 2 pawns versus 4. Well, actually, it's not really 4, because I can play rook d7 and take. So Ding Liren now has to enter the next phase of the game, right? He's met an opponent who's obviously a match with him in terms of strength, but he has been pushing the pace the entire game. But the thing about these guys, like you just saw that game Magnus Carlsen won against Hans, it's the stamina to go on and on and on. And their romantic partners are actually really big fans of that, but also their success on the chessboard translates in a similar way. Because on move 40, when you might have tuned out already, they're still battling, right? Ding Liren's going to win this game by either sacking at the last minute for this pawn and just marching in with these two, or letting that pawn go all the way to the end. He's not even going to sacrifice before it gets there. He's going to take it when it gets all the way back there. So watch what happens. Ding Liren begins this process of bringing his king, right? He's got to find a way to get his king over there. Now, white just, he has to let it happen, because if he tries to prevent it, he's not going to be able to push his pawn. Bishop d4, all right, plans are in place. And now we're going to bring the rook, and here come both pawns. Now we have a problem, a4, a3. But one guy is actually protecting promotion, so the other guy starts to protect promotion. The problem is that other guy has two pawns. Ding Liren sacrifices his pawn. Look at this savagery, a full rook sacrifice. A full rook sacrifice to then get his two pawns down. Now here, king d2 was winning. King b2 actually blundered a draw with rook b3. And now, you either walk into the check or there's this, and it's check, and yeah, tragic. But again, Ding Liren's games don't count for Stockfish moves because he's so good. So now he has to win this game. The thing is, when you battle against the queen and you have multiple pieces, they have to coordinate very well, and they have to all protect each other, so you really have to cocoon them. And the problem with cocooning them is that generally the king gets involved, and when the king gets involved, he's a beta male. Very good. The pinned comment on yesterday's recap video said that I script my humor. The guy said he thinks I'm a psychopath. He thinks that I actually script these jokes as I go. That's nuts, all right? I'm a comedic genius. And that's okay. We all have to just accept the truth at some point in life, right? About ourselves, about others. Some of us are good at some things. Some of us are bad at other things. I'm a terrible cook, but I sure do cook up some good recaps. Here we go. King c3, king c4. B pawn is going to come in at some point. Maybe you sack so that you queen with check. Queen versus rook is winning. Queen versus rook and bishop is not. But with an extra pawn, it is. So he gives a lot of checks. The pawn is now a square away from promotion. And at some point, the game is going to be over, and it's over right here. Because no matter what you do, no matter what you say or what you do, when I'm alone, I'd rather be with you. Childish Gambino. Anybody? Old Childish, much better than new Childish. Just my personal opinion. Camp, cul-de-sac. Oh, my God. Anyway, black wins. Ding Liren, 70-move win. Up top in the leaderboards. Next game I have for you is, oh my goodness, I have already clicked through some of this game. This game was an absolute battle. That position, actually, I just clicked on, spoiled nothing. That position was 0.00. So you can rewind and be like, oh, who's winning? That game was nuts. Jan Krzysztof Duda from Poland versus Eric Hansen. Here we go, e4, e5, and we have a mainline Ruy Lopez, like ultra mainline. None of these marshals. He castled because it's a nuanced move order to induce d5, and now white plays h3 anti-marshal. No. This is rapid chess. All right, there's no anti-marshals. We're going for a mainline Spanish where white plays c3, h3, tries to play for d4, black plays knight a5, c5, mainline stuff. Mainline stuff. But here, in this position, rather than taking on d4 or playing queen c7, he plays knight d7. Eric Hansen has played this a couple of times. He's played this actually last week. I believe against Hans Niemann they played some event. Knight d2, and then he plays queen c7. So it's really a question of what's going to happen with these center pawns. White pushes. The best move here, according to Stockfish, is knight f1. Rerouting to these kind of areas. Knight f1's very rarely played. I mean, this whole position's pretty rarely played, but kind of surprising. Anyway, d5, c4, and the knight transfer begins. And it took 18 moves of this game for there to be a trade, right? b4, black really has to take because otherwise he plays knight b7 and his pieces are depressing. He gets overwhelmed on two sides of the board. When you lose the battle in the middle, on the left and on the right, there's no more room left on the chessboard. You just suck. Like, you really suck. Okay? Like I said earlier in the recap, sometimes we just all gotta face, we gotta face the music. So you can't do that. He takes on b3. And, okay, in this game, one guy wants one thing, and the other guy wants another thing, right? And the truth will set you free, all right? The truth will set you free. One of these guys is going to succeed in his mission, and the other guy won't. h4. That's why the bishop is here. That's why the knights are ready. That's why, the troops are stationed. We're ready to go. h5, and the troops are stationed over there as well. Except they're not actually... It's like one guy's going for the king, and the other guy's going for I don't know what. So... Bishop to g4 prevents h5 temporarily. Psych, no it doesn't. a5. Knight back to h2, kicks the bishop out. a4. So now Duda either has to take or not, and he decides to go knight f5. Now knight f5 looks like it can't be taken. queen g3, queen g7, but it can be taken with the bishop. And the thing is, even though the pawns are knocking on the door of the king, he doesn't have to do anything. A, b3, and homie, I have a passed b pawn. I'm 2 squares away from making a queen. So you can't just do nothing. So now you gotta sit back, but here come my knights. All right, these knights in your face. E4, right? Oh, sorry, queen g3, and now e4. So now the bishop's closed off. I said e4, and then I didn't actually play it on the board. So takes. Now, this is where it's not checkers, okay? If you calculate in this position, oh my god, I lose. No. You don't have to take. Bishop f6, and the queen protects. And if you take on h7, I'm just gonna go king h8. That actually happens in the game. Knight g4, bishop g7, and he uses the pawn as an umbrella. Robert Hess likes to say that, umbrella pawn. Hashtag Rihanna. I mean, I'm hiding from the rain. I don't have to take you. King takes h7 is far more dangerous for white because the king's in the open. King h8 is an amazing concept. Keep this kind of concept in mind. Hiding behind your enemy pawn. Suddenly, dude is like, where's my attack? Bishop g5. And here Hansen rotates the rook over. Queen h4, queen f... Wait a minute. I thought that Duda was the attacker. Why are Hansen's pieces lined up on the f-file? Remember I told you when you lose the battle on all 3 sides of the board, that's when you really lose? So this guy has won the battle on the queen side. White's got nothing. If white can't crack through the middle, he's going to lose the battle in the middle. He's going to lose the battle on the right side, on the king side as well. Bishop e7, rook e8, bishop back to f6. Still a big attack. Rook f8 here played, and Duda plays bishop d4. This is insane. Hansen plays b2. It's still 0-0-0, by the way, according to Stockfish. Actually, I think queen g5 is slightly better for white. Queen g5 here is what Stockfish wants. Defending the pawn, applying some more pressure. You might be wondering, this can be taken, but then your knight gets booted, so your blockade is removed. Rook e2, queen g6, knight to e3, and now Hansen takes. You said, Levy, what the hell? You just told me you can't do that. I told you your blockade gets lifted, but not if you shove the knight in front of the bishop. And now we have a serious problem because white has now lost the battle on 2 sides of the board, and he is very close to losing the battle on the 3rd side. And all the pawns work together really well. That's the amazing thing about Hansen's position. All his 3 pawns defend everything super nicely. And it looked like they were repeating moves here. They weren't, because, you know, you got to repeat moves once to win some time back. Knight f4, and queen e4, knight e2. Queen is hitting the bishop from the other side. Eric Hansen has won with the black pieces against Jan Krzysztof Duda after 2 days of action. Eric Hansen's in 3rd place in this tournament, folks. There are 16 players. Eric Hansen is in 3rd place. All right, my man is on fire. Now, tomorrow, he has a day of death. You know, there's group of death in, like, World Cup. He has day of death tomorrow. He has to face Anish Giri, Magnus Carlsen, Nodirbek Abdusaturov, who's the rapid world champion, and Andrei Yesipenko. So tomorrow, if Eric Hansen gets, like, you know, 3 draws and a loss, or if he goes 50%, if he even wins +1 and 3 draws, oh my God. I mean, this is the best performance of his life by far. I mean, he is on absolute fire. It cannot be understated how well he's performing. Now, Yan Nepomniachtchi versus Nodirbek Abdusaturov. This is the rematch of the playoff in the World Rapid Championship that just concluded. Jan is on fire, by the way. Top 2, number 1, number 2 all day with Ding Liren. We have an Italian. We have h3. So a relatively strange move order. d6 is very classical stuff. The players clash on the queen side, etc. But Nodirbek plays d5. So he attacks the center. Hikaru has played like this. Levon has played like this. And in a position that's been played many times, Jan plays a move that's almost never been played. Now, 92 is really not all that complicated. It's just this position doesn't really happen that often. d5. It just doesn't happen all that often. So bishop e6, knight e4 kicks the bishop out, a4. Always useful. We've been seeing Yesipenko do this. Just take some space, make it so that black tries to play a5. You know, you can try to get something to g5. You can try to get something to b5. b4. Now, that looks like a problem because if you take with the knight, I play a5. That knight covers a5. You're in trouble now because if you play bishop d4, oops, and you can't take because of this. So that doesn't work. And if you take b4 with the other knight, you lose this. So f6, b4 has been not blundered, but it's very unpleasant. And bishop d2. And now Jan puts his knight on c5. So the bishop has to chop, and Jan's got a very nice advantage. The opening has worked out brilliantly for him. It's a dynamic position. So what's he gonna do? He's winning the battle on the queen side, right? Much more pressure, much more space. Time to crack Nødderbeck straight up the middle. Like a stiff jab, you know, from Bobby Green against, what's his name? Hasparat in the most recent UFC, right? He was just cracking him up the middle every single time. So d4, bishop h5, time to win the battle on the king side, g4. I don't write this stuff before the recaps, honestly. It just kind of comes to me as I go. A lot of you ask if I write scripts for my recaps. I don't. I hit the play button, then we talk for 30 minutes. I teach you stuff, we laugh, we have a good time. Listen, it's part of the job. You don't get #1 YouTube channel without, well, having some ability to do this, right? But also not without the best fans in the world. You. And also this fan over here is not so bad. It was a terrible joke. G4. That's how you know I don't write them. Takes. Well, no, I do write them. I just don't write them for the recaps. And by the way, if you're wondering why Nødderbeck didn't just go back, well, it's because of this. So he deliberately sacrifices a pawn, I mean a piece, king to h1, and sometimes when you're under belligerent attack, there is nothing wrong with playing it solid and playing it safe. And you want to play rook g2, you want to take, and at some point you got to block your king. We just talked about this. The king's a beta male until king and pawn endgames. Then he shines. The king needs everybody to go away in order to do his business. Kind of like me in the bathroom, like public restrooms. You didn't have to know that, but now you do. So knight to e5, bishop to b3, knight to f3. Look at this. Look at that. I mean, Nødderbeck is... Let's not forget, Nødderbeck doesn't have that bad of a position. For example, like in a worst case scenario, you know, rook f6, rook h, like there's still an attack, all right? Jan has to be very careful. He goes for a queen trade. Tries to puncture the tires of the truck, right? f5, bishop d1, cool, calm, and collected. Don't be afraid to make backwards moves, all right? There's nothing wrong with being passive, all right? You know what they say, sometimes passive, but mostly massive. So bishop d1 hits the knight on f3, and he's still creating threats, even from a position of weakness, aka defense, not really weakness. Rook takes b7, and it's still, you know, looking a little bit annoying, but you just play safe. Play safe. No more checks. So queen to e4 is a check. He plays it. Rook blocks. No more checks, and Nødderbeck continues to try to create something, and he doesn't resign, actually. He continues the game. But unfortunately, at some point, you just run out of material, and that's what happened here. Queen g3, queen h6. You can give some checks. Look at this absolutely savage move to end this game. Jan was like, all right, Nødderbeck, enough. Queen takes g7, sacking the queen. King g7, bishop back to h5. And beautiful win for Jan. I mean, just honestly, amazing win for Jan, who is destroying this event. Jan is destroying this event. We're not going to look at the standings just yet. I have one final game to show you. Jan has 19 points out of 24. At some point, he won 5 games in a row. He's won 6 of his last 8 games. I mean, just a monster. Absolute monster. The final game that I have for you, I told you I would end the day with Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen had a rough first day, and he's looking to go 4 out of 4. All right, he's just won his first 3 rounds. He's looking to go 4 out of 4. His opponent is none other than Pragdananda Rameshbabu, who's not having the best event. Honestly, he's not having the best event. So, you know, should Magnus win this game, I apologize if we're kind of picking on some opponents here, but from the opening, we get total symmetry. Now, generally, the path for an advantage here for white is to take on d5 and play bishop to b5. And what ends up happening is that there's, you know, some isolated pawn positions that can happen. I meant to say isolated pawn. I don't know why I almost said opposite colored bishops. But, you know, isolated pawn positions. But Prag comes very well prepared to play total symmetry. I guess Magnus just decided to play this position. It's a completely symmetrical structure. And it's very equal, obviously, because it's totally symmetrical. The only advantage that white has 2 advantages. The first advantage, he's Magnus Carlsen. The second advantage, he has the move. So he can always make the aggressive attacking moves into black's position, right? This position has been reached a couple times before. By the way, Vidit again. So it's the second time in this recap that guys are following Vidit's game. So Vidit plays some good stuff. Queen b6. Prag plays a brand new move. I don't think this has ever been played before in database. And Magnus takes and plays knight a4. So Magnus gives up the bishop pair, but he's trying to win the battle on the dark squares, rook e3. So he has 2 ways to go here. This way, right, that way in the future, or this way. We don't know where Magnus is going to go. Knight e4. Prog plants the knight very firmly there. Now, you cannot play f3 here. You just can't play it. It's way too dangerous. Black will hang out around here. You've now shut off your own activity this way, and various sacrifices are lurking against your king. But that's exactly what happens. Magnus plays f3. So Magnus saying, I don't care about stockfish. f3, knight g5. All right. Then he plays rook c3. All right, queen b7. So Magnus is going for like the typical positional Magnus suffocation, right? Bishop back to h2, making sure the bishop is defended when it gets taken. Knight e6, and Prog gives away c6. Prog has given away the pawn on c6. Like, he's lost it. However, it has taken Magnus some significant positional weakening in order to do it. We have knight to f4. Bishop h2 and knight f4 first was... Wow, Jesus. It was better. Excuse me. But we have knight f4, and now Magnus plays knight e5, and he disconnects the bishop and the rook from infiltrating, and this knight is kind of stuck. So we have bishop takes e5, d takes e5, and the knight drives into d3. Now, normally you just go take, 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 but there's rooks that see each other. This doesn't work. You cannot take because I will take you first, and then I'm going to be up in exchange. So he takes on c8 first, and he trades everything, and if we just count the material, Magnus has a pawn up. He's just in a perfect position to be Magnus. He's a pawn up, right? He's got the 2-on-1 on the queen side. Magnus in the driver's seat. Let's watch how he's going to win this endgame. d4, b3, all right, solidifying. Queen c6, queen d2, king h7, king h2, bishop g6. How does white make progress? Magnus, you have the floor. You have our attention. Queen a5. All right, queen drives out to a5. It's going to take on a7. Queen c1, queen takes a7, queen to e3. Prog is now down 2 pawns. He is well on his way to losing to Magnus. However, it's not so clear because Prog still has a very active d-pawn, and there are vague attacking possibilities against this king. This king is actually, it's kind of an illusion that this king is safe, and the queen wandered off over there, and it doesn't have a way home. It can get to a5, but it can't actually get to the useful squares. For example, if you play queen c7 in this position and try to go here, I will play knight f4, and now you can't. You actually just cannot get back home. Hashtag Spider-Man. So queen e3, knight back to c3 is a very tricky idea. It's a very top-level type of move. Knight c3, tactical idea, can't take because you hang your queen. Don't do that. It actually looks like you can promote, but then there's this heartbreaking move, bishop f4. And if you take, then you can't make a queen at all. If you go here, then you are down 3 pawns in a bishop endgame? Yeah, sucks to suck. So knight c3 played, and Prog plays knight f4. Well, we already discussed this, right? Knight to d1, trying to hit the queen, queen d2. So now the queen is hit. Queen is hitting the knight. Queen's also hitting this. Magnus plays knight f2. Okay, great. Knight to e2. Trying to get the bishop. But it's actually worse than that. It's actually worse than that. He's trying to checkmate Magnus. And Magnus can't stop it. He plays h4 to give his king some breathing room. Here comes queen e1. Queen d7. Queen d7 is a very nice move. Bishop f5 is now covered. King can always get away. Prog just takes the bishop. If king takes g3, it's check. The king goes to the light squares. Bishop f5 wins the queen. Or you get mated. King g4, you somehow get mated. And if you block, then I go queen e3. I win this. I promote. I win the game. Magnus plays queen takes d4, and Prog blocks out the queen with his bishop. This is an absolutely disgusting move. Bishop to c2, right in the queen's face. Bishop doesn't see the queen. Doesn't even see the queen. Literally, you just can't even see the queen. The queen can see everything. And she suffocates with this tag team, and the queen is going this way. And that's it. Magnus's queen ventures out, takes an extra pawn, and dies in the forest. And this is just, it's over. And Magnus resigns after bishop c2. Pragnananda bouncing back on what was a rough start in the first 2 days to beat Magnus Carlsen. That is insane. What a win for him. Magnus finishes the second day with, he's in 5th place, tied with Vincent Keimer. I forgot to put the link to the tournament in the description. I am very, very sorry. But you will have all the standings. You can check it out. Jan Nepomniachtchi crushing it. We're cheering for Kostanjuk. who's been having a tough time. She actually, I think Kostyuk tweeted right before the tournament that she was ready for the suffering. So she's been battling as well, and you know, we're cheering for the underdog story there. Hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday. Hope you enjoyed these games. I'll see you for day number 3. Get out of here.